welcome, welcome. A little abrupt the end of the music. I'm going to find a way to have it less abrupt the next time. So this is another episode of the Isaya's Inspiring Evenings podcast. It's one of the series of Rounded Up She Goes, which is all about the menstrual cycle. And today we are very lucky because we have the biggest specialist around of the menstrual cycle. We have the amazing Lisa Jara. And if you don't see her because you're watching this, you're listening to this, she's making faces. So
I'm just feeling so honored.
good. Yeah, you should be. Because, honored actually, because you're here. So, in case you don't know, we series with Lisa lately. So, the third or fourth episode. There's going to be more. So, in case you want them, you can find everything on my podcast, obviously. But in case you're just new to Lisa, let me introduce her. So, I'm going to go and read her bio, which is the easiest way. So, Lisa Jara is a menstrual and menopausal health specialist. She's helping women and menstruating folks alleviate their menstrual or perimenopausal health challenges in a holistic and natural way without medication, external hormones, or surgery, so they can take their menstrual or perimenopausal health into their own hands. She leads a quiet yet powerful revolution for sacred rebels ready to radically trust their own body's cyclical or cyclical wisdom, release trauma and internalize shame, and erode patriarchy from the inside out. Let's do this. I'm all for it. So, if you are listening to this and you are catching us live, you can absolutely ask questions. Don't hesitate. Just write your questions in the chat of wherever you're listening, and we can answer those. Today, the topic that we chose, one of those we assume that we've talked about this, so we thought we'd do that back to basic one. What is a menstrual cycle? How does this cycle work? How does it work you? And on which levels? Because there's now a common agreement that, oh yeah, women have this thing, and now we are now authorized, air quotes, to talk about it. But in fact, we still don't know whether we are menstruating or not. We still don't know very much about it because it's still kind of hidden under the carpet, or we have so many of us, we have, I know for me, I had a very, let's call it medical or scientific explanation, which is completely cut from whatever experience I was experiencing in my body. So, welcome back, Lisa. Tell me all about it. What's the menstrual cycle? Back to basics. Let's pretend we're all.
Thank
I'm very good
you.
at playing dummy and
A-
asking the.
And also, I believe to a certain degree we all are, and it's good to be in this curious mode of childlike wonder every once in a while to just see what else is there, what else is possible. When you read my bio, it was so funny because yes, eroding patriarchy from the inside out. And how do we do that? By things like this, learning more about our own freaking bodies. Because
Preach.
this information has been withheld from us, or maybe not directly withheld. I mean, to some degree, most schools provide something like sex education, but that's done at an age where we are pretty much concerned with other things, where the hormones are running wild. So we are even not in the space to absorb that information.
No, I remember
So
very clearly my boys, for instance, when they were at school and they were being taught about that. Of course, they're boys, so they're not even supposedly remotely not concerned. But I remember what their attitude was a stupid laugh, the kind of, ooh, I don't want to talk about that. Don't tell me, there's blood involved. Oh my God. And sex, ooh, even
yeah.
worse. So, yeah. And I believe it's not just the boys, it's the girls as well.
Yeah, that still get comments like, welcome to the club, now the curse is on you as well. I mean, that's literally still happening. And I myself am pretty much included in this. For in my family, it was a neutral thing. It was a biological process that happened. You can talk about it, but it's also not something that's appreciated. It's just there.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. Um, and I did not understand until my early 30s. I'm now 37. How amazing and powerful the cycle is. Probably also because when I was 16, I went on the pill. And that is also another thing that happens very often. Young girls get prescribed the pill very early on for reasons, not contraceptive reasons for what the pill was actually made for, but more like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you've got acne, give you the pill. Oh, you've got pain, give you the pill. With the explanation of that will regulate your hormones, that will regulate your cycle, which
Mm-hmm.
is bullshit because what it does is it eliminates the cycle.
Yeah.
Now, some people might be surprised because, yes, you do get a bleed, but that is called a withdrawal bleed that happens because for 3 weeks your body gets the hormones through the pill, and then for one
Mm-hmm.
week there is no hormones in the pill, or you even stop taking the pill for 1 week. It depends on which one you have. And because you don't get the hormones, that's when your body starts bleeding because
Mm-hmm.
of the withdrawal of hormones. But it's not like an endometrial lining has been built up that is now being
Yeah.
shed. And yeah, that is definitely something I didn't know about, and that would have influenced my choices had I known.
Yeah, I didn't
So
know
the
either.
menstrual cycle.
You said early 30s. I'd go for late 40s, as far as I'm concerned. The actual knowledge. Everything else was just experience, but actually sitting myself down and getting the information, that was really late in the game. And I would have done many things differently had I known, had I had the information before. So let's give the information.
Yeah, so a menstrual cycle, any cycle for that matter, is made up of four bigger phases, which I like to refer to as the inner seasons. There are many traditions now that call them the inner seasons because, especially when you've grown up in a region where you have four different seasons. I know there are people who live in countries where there is maybe just a dry and a wet season.
Hmm.
But if you know anything about the four seasons, it's easy to explain in that regard. And we can certainly also go to a hormonal level in a moment, but just very briefly, you would have the inner winter, that is your menstruation, the bleeding phase. Then comes the inner spring, which is the follicular phase. So when the follicles start to ripen in the ovaries, that is also when a lot of energy returns. Up to ovulation, which is when the follicle releases the egg, where you tend to have the most energy. And then going into the luteal phase, and then the premenstrual phase. So this inner autumn part I usually describe as two different sides, because in this first inner autumn part we usually still have like energy and creativity and all of that, and then the closer we come to the next menstruation, the more we return inwards, the more we like to retreat, the
Hmm.
more yeah, maybe even cranky we can become. And I don't mean that in a derogative way or anything. It's just that we at that point we can't tolerate bullshit anymore, so we might act up
Yeah.
because of that. So it's a good thing.
A- And do you consider that the faces are of equal length, or are they different, to your opinion?
I do believe it depends on the person, always, everything. So the bleeding phase, menstruation, can, in a healthy cycle, let's say, can vary between 3 days and 7 days. And all of
Mm,
that is normal. So that's already quite a big span.
yeah.
And then ovulation I need to make the distinction between ovulation, the biological process, because like when the egg is
Mm-hmm.
released, then you have a window of 24 to 48 hours when the egg can
Yeah.
get impregnated.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that this upward, outward, communicative, high energy phase lasts longer than these 48 hours. I personally can
That
feel
you
it
call
for
the
like 4 days,
inner summer.
maybe the inner summer. I would say I can feel it 3 days, 4 days, 5 days as this span. And before that is the follicular phase, and afterwards is the luteal phase. And they vary according to how long the bleed is and how long the
Mm-hmm.
ovulatory phase is. And the whole cycle, because I know that a lot of people say it's 28 days as a standard, which is not true. Because anything between 21 days and I'd say 35 to 40 days is normal, like can be considered healthy if it occurs
Because women are not
regularly. Like if
machines.
you always, yes, because like you when you always have like 35, 36 days, but repeatedly, I would consider that healthy. It's
Yeah.
your cycle,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
I had a
And
32.
there we also already,
When I was when I had a cycle, it was roughly around 32 days, never 28.
yeah, minus
It was
30, 31.
very, yeah.
But I have a
So
friend for whom it is like 21 to 24 days. So it's really, it depends. And then,
yeah,
of course, because the cycle length is different, then the singular phases are different in length as well. Like when you've got a
obviously,
21-day cycle, then you will probably not bleed for 7 or so days because
yeah,
that's like one
yeah.
third.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense that you would have a proportion of the cycle being. I was going to say devoted, but kind of taken by one phase.
Yeah.
So
And also, one thing I want to say, because
do
I recently held a workshop called Happy Healthy Period, the workshop, and I sat down with myself. So, what do we actually know about what a healthy period looks like, or a healthy menstrual cycle for that matter? There is not much that we can say that's true for everyone. What we can say is what I've just described, like a cycle, whole cycle length between 21 and 35, 40 days, a bleed length of 3 to 7 days, the absence of symptoms like migraines, bloating, breast tenderness, all of this pain, of course,
pain.
and and a blood red, kind of red for your blood. So it can be happening that in the beginning and at the end it's a little brownish. That's when like old blood gets flushed out. But apart from that, the blood should be red, red, blood red, and nothing else. And those are basically the signs for a healthy period or healthy menstrual
Yeah,
cycle.
which means that leaves a lot of variation possible for each and every woman or menstruator, uh, which
Yes.
which increases the importance of information and of getting to know yourself, not only from the books or from this podcast, for instance, but also from observing your own menstrual cycle. So, into the Back to Basics episode, I think we should definitely remind women and menstruators that writing down your cycle is a very, very important tool if you want to get to know your own individual specialities. So, writing down every day what's happening, how you feel, and what's happening in gynecology in the OBGYN area, and in your feelings or emotions. That after 2, 3, 4 months, you will have a very nice picture of your cycle, your individual, specific to you.
Yep. I happen to have a little course ready, a tiny course, how to chart your cycle, unlock the healing
Voila.
powers of your cycle, I called it, where you will learn exactly that and how you can chart it in literally maximum 2 minutes a day.
Awesome.
Because
I'm just
that's
having
quite
a look
easy.
if
It
you.
needs to be easy to implement, and I can definitely send you the link.
Yeah, so I definitely, because it's not in the links that you already sent me. So I would love to have it, to offer it to our listeners if they are interested. And yeah, it's as you're saying, it's 2 to 5 minutes a day. It's not a big thing, and it will give invaluable information for your life, because that's, this is about how, instead of considering that as menstruators our cycle is cool, we can, if we sit with it and we learn to be in it, in fact it becomes a superpower. It becomes, I was going to say, a weapon, because I can use my cycle as a chart of where I can go and what I can do, and use each of the faces to their best potential, including rest, which is a superpower, to my opinion.
Yeah, that's why I often call it a compass. You can, like,
Yeah.
literally, your cycle is like a compass, with menstruation being your true north. So, in menstruation, we are usually the most inward and also the most connected to our true essence, if you will, like this deep, unchangeable truth of who we are. That's when we
Hmm.
are most connected to it. So every cycle we come around and we get reminded of who we are and why we're here. And then throughout the rest of the cycle, we might get caught up in new ideas and in being in the outside world. But come winter, we will definitely remember, oh, that's who I am. And now I've got, like, I can make new decisions in the new cycle as to how I want to bring that into the world.
Hmm. So, the title that you gave to the episode is How Your Cycle Works You. So, I was wondering, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by works you? It's like, are we a puppet in the hands of our cycle? Or is it something more of in the area of, it actually affects every area of us?
Yeah, that's more of what I mean. Definitely, we are not at the mercy of our cycle. We can, when we understand and know how to read it, it's our best and most supportive ally, I believe. And then we can really live in tune with it. And yeah. So, what I mean by it works us, and if one of the listeners or watchers knows a better English term, please send it to me. But it's this, like, we are constantly going round and round, and this series is called Round and Up She Goes. We are going round and around, and the cycle is working us on a physical level, on an emotional level, on a mental level, on a spiritual level. Every month, it's like we're being put through the ringer almost, but in a good kind of way. Like, it
Agreed.
can, I I say, uh, forget all the self-help books. Look at your cycle. Your cycle is the best self-help book that you can read when you learn to read your cycle, because it will show you again your truth of who you are. It will, in inner autumn, bring out all the places where you are not being yourself or your full self
Hmm.
yet, so that you've got a chance to distill the lessons and then decide if you want to live more in tune with yourself or not. I mean, you always have the choice, right?
Yeah.
It's not like someone has power over you. The power is inside of you. You can always choose. And so in our winter, what's happening is, like, your hormones are at their lowest level. All of the hormones, like the major hormones in a female body, are estrogen and progesterone. We do have a little bit of testosterone, but in our winter, in menstruation, it's all at the lowest level. That's why
Hmm.
we have the lowest amount of energy physically too. That's why we need rest, as you said. And when we try and push ourselves, it will wreak havoc on the rest of the cycle. But when we pay attention and be mindful of getting, and I like to say, our 1% of rest that we can manage, because if you are a CEO of a big company, or a mother of two little kids, you might not have, or give yourself, or really have the opportunity to rest a lot. And how can you show your body that you still care? Like, can you close the bathroom door when you go to the bathroom and leave your kids for half a minute and that's your rest that you get? Or can you take the elevator instead of the stairs just to show your body, hey, today we're moving a little bit slower
Yeah.
and we're having this little bit of rest?
So we discussed the physical side. So we discussed the cycle and the hormones. Now you said emotional. I want to know. Tell me more.
That's
How
the
does
next
that
part, exactly.
how does that work
So,
emotionally?
and I think it's easiest to go from season to season. So, like, in our winter and menstruation, on a physical level it's low energy. On an emotional level, it's this often this deep connection. And we can also already see like all these levels influence each other, because deep inner connection can also be considered spiritual, because for me that is a sign of my spirituality, is when I feel connected to myself and through that to something bigger than I. But this deep connection, we can feel quite okay at that time. Of course, in case you have symptoms like pains or migraines or whatever, then of course it's not as easy and as restful as it could be. And then you need to get that checked. And on a mental level too, we are, as I shared, we know who we are. We can even go into a journaling exercise asking, who am I? And then like automatic writing, just looking at what comes through, what wants to flow through on paper, of what the truth is of who you are and what you're here to do. And that can change, right? It's not like it's fixed.
Oh
It can
yes.
change from cycle to cycle, but it's good to check back in with you. So where are you at now? Where do you want to go next? And then we turn into inner spring, or the follicular phase. And then on the hormonal physical level is when the estrogen starts rising. The follicles are ripening, and that gives us this nice little surge of energy on a physical level. Pretty much like spring outside, when the plants start blooming, or like start bringing out the first fresh green, and everything is new. And on an emotional level, it's this upward, upbeat energy that we can have. On a mental level, it's this new ideas, new inspiration that's coming. Also, this looking at the world with childlike wonder. We are curious. We are again uplifted, and in this kind of let's get on with life.
I was going to
Let's
go
have
for
some fun.
dynamic.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
energy can be. And so on a spiritual level, I say it's the phase of the maiden. That's definitely something you are familiar with, or
I
of the
am.
young one, simply like that. The child that explores the world, for whom everything is new and exciting and an adventure. Like each day is an adventure. And then in inner summer, the hormones shift again. The testosterone rises, because ovulation means you will be fertile. So your body needs to ensure that you want sex so that you can create new life. So the hormones, the testosterone rises. That's often also the time where energetically you feel most open, outward, communicative, because you want to meet new people. You need to see if there is someone you like and you may want to create children with, who knows. But that's definitely your body's tendency. Now, communicative, I like to say, is when you are an introverted person, then communicative looks very different for you than it would for an extroverted person. Nevertheless, in the whole of your cycle, which is unique to you, it's probably the most outward and communicative phase. Emotionally, you can feel, some feel very magnetic, like, ta-da, here I am. Let's celebrate life. And that's also an invitation I like to make for this phase. It's like, celebrate yourself, the light and the shadow. Like, can you allow everything of you to be there and to be good? to be welcome, because celebration is an act of revolution as well.
It
We are
is.
taught to not be full of ourselves, and I dare say being full of yourself is a really good thing, because when you are full of yourself, there is no room for other people's opinions and expectations.
And then you give birth to yourself,
And then you give birth to
to your
yourself.
creations into the world.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, even in actual birth, it's not just a child that's being birthed, it's a mother that, or a parent that is being birthed as
Absolutely.
well. So, yeah, this kind of energy. Uh, and which is also the archetype with it, like the
Yeah.
mother or the parent. And then in the inner autumn, in the luteal phase and the premenstrual phase, that's when our energy level decreases. So on ovulation, what happens is the egg gets released in the body, and then what was formerly the follicle now becomes the corpus luteum, and it emits progesterone, the other important hormone, and also some estrogen. But this is in the fertile years the way your body produces progesterone. And progesterone is known as the calming hormone. It helps the endometrial lining to be built so that potentially an impregnated egg can nest in there and grow. But it's also the calming hormone. So in this first half, we can feel very calm and focused, even. So that's like touching the mental, but also an emotional level. Focus. We like decluttering. Also, in the sense of decluttering your physical surroundings to make it nice, to make it homely for the possible pregnancy. I think there are a lot of relationships there
Yeah,
between
I
what's
like
happening
it.
in the
Yep.
body and outside of the body.
Of course.
The other thing that happens, and I want to briefly touch on the estrogen that was in the follicular phase, like that was when estrogen was the dominant hormone in the body. Estrogen is the caring hormone. So you care also more about what other people think. Right? And now in the luteal phase, the estrogen level declines and the progesterone level rises. So you start giving less of a fuck. You care less about what other people think about you. I mean, you still do care about people because we are social creatures, but in this different way. And that's also the thing where I believe a lot of the symptoms like premenstrual symptoms, premenstrual tension, the inner critic, that like our inner critical voices can become very, very loud in this time. And I believe it's because some part of us, possibly not conscious, realizes that there are many areas in our life where our truth isn't aligned with the way we live or the environment we live in. And this inner disconnect is what creates stress for the body, is what creates symptoms.
Interesting.
And so and that's definitely something I have heard many people with PMS symptoms say, is that when they started charting their cycle and being more mindful of the different phases and also knowing more about who they are and what they want to say yes to and what they want to say no to, the less the symptoms. So the more they got in tune with their body just by paying attention to what's happening, not even doing much with it, but just by paying attention, and I think it's this inner stress that decreases. And stress is the major problem for our body. That's where most of the menstrual health challenges and the perimenopausal health challenges come from. It's the stress levels. Like our nervous system, that is the last episode.
Yeah.
And definitely
Absolutely.
go back if you haven't listened to that yet. But that is the most important system in our body. And when that is constantly activated, then yeah, your body will tell you, hey, we don't feel safe,
We
please
don't feel
change
good.
something. And again, when you don't know about these things and the relationships, then you don't know what's happening, and you feel at the mercy of your cycle, at the mercy of your emotions, at the mercy of your thoughts. But once you understand these relationships, you can find your little wiggle room and the leeway that you have in changing something about us. Because
Yeah.
the luteal phase, the inner autumn, I believe, is so powerful because we are connected to our truth. It's our truth speaking time, and we can more unapologetically say, no, I'm no longer up for that, but I want more of this, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. It's really interesting because I have obviously my own take on the menstrual cycle for two reasons. First of all, I studied it, but also I'm in menopause. So I'm just going to take 2 minutes, if that's all right with you, to remind anyone who is in perimenopause or menopause that they still have a cycle. Just so you know, it doesn't go away. It's not like you have to bin it in some,
Yes.
it doesn't exist anymore, and then you just have to once a cyclic woman or a cyclic menstruator, then forever. It's just a question of how you again get in contact with it, chart it, and realize how it works. For me, I'm very connected with the moon, so it's like now it's very way more regular. So instead of having faces that are longer and faces that are shorter, I roughly go with the moon exactly, and I can feel the moon changes in my body. Now it's like okay, down we go, kind of, So I really invite um, people who are not menstruating anymore to not let go of the power of the cycle, because it will still be very present in your body and in your emotions. And it can be, once again, a very powerful place to be with yourself, in the four different ways that you can be with yourself. So, as a maiden, as a mother, as an enchantress, and as a crone or as an old woman. And I think it's really important, and that also maybe plays a role in the societal rejection of the menopausal women. Oh, you're not even useful. You're not
Yep.
even cyclic. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. In our own particular way. And once again, very individually. Um,
Yes. And in my course, the course on cycle charting and how to unlock the healing power of your cycle, because me too, I'm very much of the opinion. That's why I don't solely speak of the menstrual cycle. I
of
always
course.
speak of the cycle, because I also believe that once we cross over into postmenopause, we go over to the moon cycle. That's why in my course I've got a bonus lesson on how to track during perimenopause, which is when the cycle can be all over the place,
All over.
and
Right.
also how to track or how to chart postmenopause, or for example after hysterectomy, or when you're a
Mhm.
trans woman and you do not have a menstrual cycle, you still
Yeah.
have a cycle.
Amazing, amazing. So yeah, go and have a look at Lisa's information. You will find everything above or below the video or the audio, depending on what you're, where you're listening to us. But you will find all the information, and she's got you basically.
And the other thing that I like to say, and that I definitely want to mention today, is like we're going through this process every month, going through all these different phases, and it's basically like a death and rebirth process every month.
Yeah,
In menstruation, we die. Part
yeah,
of us dies, which is also a taboo in our society. Like the dark half of the year, the dark half of the cycle, the dark goddesses. They are pretty much a taboo. But we're moving through it nonetheless. Like your
yeah,
cycle is there, and whether you want to or not, you are moving through a death and rebirth process every month. And you can use it as a practice ground for the bigger
yeah.
transitions in life. Because when you practice on
Of
a
course.
regular level in inner autumn, like this, okay, part of me needs to die, I'm grieving, I'm allowing all these emotions to come up. Also, maybe at the injustice of the world and the societies we live in. But when you know how to do this every month, guess what? When you come to the moment where you, for example, birth a baby, and your past life is your past life and you are a new version of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you know how to grieve and how to hold yourself all while caring for a toddler or a baby. And definitely when something happens, like life happens all the time, you get a diagnosis, you lose a job, a
Of course.
relationship ends, you know how to hold yourself. And the biggest
Absolutely.
transition of all, perimenopause, you already practiced all sorts of tools on how you can support yourself through it. And that's why it's to me so important that we know from a very young age, A, how the cycle works so that we can be mindful about it, and that we know from a young age that we will go through perimenopause, what that entails, and how we can support ourselves through it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we break the taboo.
Agreed. For me, the cycle is also kind of a demonstration, like, what as above, so below. So we have a monthly cycle, right, or roughly monthly. Sh-
Yeah.
Um, Making it simple. But we also have a daily one. Like in the morning, we have the maiden's energy. Then there's noon, high sun. Everything is about sharing. There's light everywhere. And then comes sunset, where you go down, basically. And then it's the night, the fear of the dark and everything that happens at night, which is basically a small death. And then it starts all over again the next day. Now, this is the micro cycle, if you want. We also have a macro cycle over the course of a year, just like you mentioned with the seasons, right? Spring maiden, summer mother, enchantress of the autumn, and winter crone. Of course, we also have that in the course of a lifetime for menstruators. I mean, I was a maiden, I was a mother, and now guess what? I'm an enchantress going to crone. So that is also kind of reflects in all sizes. I don't know how to explain that very clearly, which I think calls for even more of what you were saying about rehearsing or getting ready to, kind of getting accustomed to this. And for me, when you look at it in the way that it's everywhere, it's in a day, it's in a month, it's in a year, it's in my life, it's in the universe with the moon. It's like so reassuring, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just okay, everything is normal, and yes, I'm going to be dying every night and waking up tomorrow morning, because nobody dies in the night just from sleeping, right? And so it's really interesting for me to consider that from that angle. I don't know if you find that um, pleasing.
Absolutely. That was how I made peace with my anorexia, peace with my body, is because I learned about the cycles, like all the cycles, and
Mm.
how they interact and how they are all connected and how they all show the same energetic characteristics. It makes for, because our brains like control, of course. But usually, what we do is this very graspy kind of control. Oh, it needs to be like this, and there is a right and there is a wrong. And the cycles teach us that there is a different kind of control possible, one that
Yeah,
is more like a dependable rhythmic pattern that's at
yeah,
play, that is sometimes a little different. No spring is ever the same, even in nature.
yeah.
But there are some things that I've been there, I've done this before in a different way, but like I remember there is an
Mm.
inkling, okay, so let me try this because last time that helped. And also what I love is that the Native Americans, they call the
Yeah.
moon grandmother moon.
I think you might see just behind me, there's this little round thing that is a Native American cycle charting device that I designed for myself at some point.
And I love this idea of grandmother moon, of
Yeah,
having the moon. I imagine her smiling down on me, her child in spirit, and like welcoming me back into her arms when I cross over into menopause.
I love
And
that.
that
Yeah,
is so reassuring. Like
yeah.
we are not alone.
No, no, we're not. Absolutely not. For me, the most surprising thing about the cycle at the ripe age of 57 right now, and having been officially declared menopause, I was told your ovaries have shrunk. That was kind of thrown at me. It felt really hard, to be honest. The interesting thing is that I don't feel the seasons, and now I'm talking about the seasons of the earth, in the same way that I did. I used to be a spring person. I loved spring. Now it's too much for me. It's too much energy. As soon as we hit summer solstice and we start going down, there's a relief in my body. It's like, oh, cool. That's my jam now. Now we're talking. But I used to be this very excited about spring and kind of almost feeling depressed every autumn. Now it's the contrary. So I think that these reflections or these interactions are very powerful. And if we listen, again, if we chart and if we listen, we get to learn how we evolve from one cycle to the other, whether it's one day, 1 month, or one lifetime. And I find this really, again, reassuring and fun, kind of enjoyable. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
One other thing that I want to mention, just because we talked about it before we went live, is that due to different circumstances, your cycle, like in cycle length and such, can differ. Like your cycle, it's not like you, I call it cycle charting for a reason. I don't call it cycle tracking because it's like unknown territory almost like every month, and you've got an opportunity with an open mind and an open heart to go at it and be curious as
yeah.
to, okay, what's it going to be like this month. And it can vary, like no cycle will be exactly the same every time. There will be these patterns, but that's about it. And for example, I caught COVID last year, and ever since my cycle has been different. So things like illness, stress, they can postpone
Pregnancy,
menstruation, for example, pregnancy for
pregnancy
sure,
changes everything.
breastfeeding, all of that.
But even after, even after you're done being pregnant and have done breastfeeding, for me, my cycle changed after each of my children. There was different,
Yeah. And that's
and
why, again, we need to chart
it's
our
normal.
experience.
It was completely different, and yet
Exactly.
completely normal.
Yes,
Because we are
exactly.
not machines again. I feel like a parrot,
Yeah.
but this is one of the things that I'm really, really very passionate about, because the as soon as the knowledge and the conversation around the cycle and the menstrual cycle and anything OBGYN has become more open in society, it was grabbed by the medicals, and they then applied scientific formulas to it. So I was told, for instance, that a pregnancy is 39 weeks, and my son was born at 37 weeks. But he was ready. I mean, like, he was big enough. There
Yep.
was no way, there was no way he was getting any bigger without me actually having his feet coming off my mouth. So it was like, and the doctors were adamant that he was going to be premature. And when he was born, they were kind of
What?
shocked because he was so big and obviously was not premature. So again, we are not machines, and I think that the charting is me getting to know myself and not getting applied a formula of this is how your cycle is going to function. This is how your body works. Of course, you need the information, and go and get some information with medical professionals, with Lisa, with anyone who you are ready to trust about that. But the best information you'll get is from yourself.
And also, what I like to say is when you know your, like, no one knows your body as you do. You know your body best. And when you have charted your cycle, when you are in tune with your body and understand, you can even better explain it to your
Yeah,
doctors, and then you can collaborate with them instead of feeling dependent on them. So,
absolutely.
even for that, it can be very valuable to just chart. The last caveat that I want to make is that a lot of talk is about cyclical living nowadays, like how to, or cycle syncing, how to sync your life with your cycle, like what kind of sports to do in which phase, what kind of foods to eat in which
Even your
phase, and
business.
like, oh yeah, even your business. And while to a certain degree that is very valid, um, I believe we need to pay attention to not make it this, there is a right and a wrong, and you
Yeah,
have to do it like this every time because that's the best for this particular cycle phase. No, it's about you getting in
exactly.
touch with
Again,
yourself and
again, we
listen.
don't go into the this is the formula.
Yeah.
This is not a formula. Your body is not a formula. You are not a formula. Neither
Yeah.
am I. Neither are you, Lisa. And I think it's yeah, it's really the I think the final word for back to basics is find your way to get to know your body, how it functions,
Yeah.
get as much information as you can or need, and then listen. Just listen and chart it and see how it works. And then you can come and listen to the next episode of our podcast, which I don't know the topic is, but there will be another episode about female health in general and some specifics. So we had one episode about the nervous system. We had one about what was it?
The lymphatic
The
system.
lymphatic system. Yeah, sorry. And we are going to have another one in June, or is it May? In May. So if you're listening to that any other year than 2024, you already have all these episodes available. So go and check all of them and tell us, do you want us to talk about more? Do you have specific questions? Do you have ideas on, or do you want to come and give us a testimonial of how you live with your cycle? You want to talk with us? We're here. We're not going anywhere. And I want to end this by thanking Lisa very much for being with me once again. And yeah, I love doing those. I'm really happy that we went back to basics because there is so many things that are assumed that we know, and we don't. Um, I'm pretty sure both you and me, we still have things to learn from our bodies, from discussing with others, from the scientists as well. The more information, the more we can give ourselves permission to listen to the body and be with it or with her, as far as I'm concerned. Does that make sense?
To me, it does. Thank you so much for having me again.
My pleasure. I will talk to you all soon. Thank you very much for having the both of us. Bye for now.